Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Spanish Football Podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides. Sid Lowe is alongside me as ever, as he has been for the last 13 years or so. Hello, Sydney.
Hello, Philip.
You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you, yeah.
Good. Monday morning, as ever, the busiest time of the week for Dr. Lowe. What are you writing about this week?
Well, I mean, all the things that I liked the idea of writing about didn't quite come off.
Right.
And I thought the really nice one for me actually was Eder Sarabia and everything that's happening at Elche and playing against Athletic for the first time, the club that he always grew up wanting to play for, and receiving the Manager of the Month award from his father, Manu.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a 0-0 draw.
Yeah, I mean, you've spoken to Eder Sarabia, haven't you, for the last few weeks, and you've been desperately trying to sort of crowbar that into a column. I think Elche is the big story this week. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do Elche, and then
it just doesn't happen, does it? Yeah. So obviously, I think you have to look at it this weekend in terms of the way that the big two in the week building up to the Clásico managed to get victories in not particularly impressive performances.
Absolutely. Let's touch upon what happened on Matchday 9. We'll quickly skim over what happened on Friday night. Sydney was at the Carlos Tartiere to see Oviedo really quite comprehensively beaten 2-0 by Espanyol. Espanyol looking at a much better cohesive outfit than Oviedo on that Friday evening. Then Saturday, extraordinary comeback from Mallorca. They were 1-0 down against Sevilla and they scored 3 goals in 10 minutes to win 3-1 and move off the bottom of the table. Barcelona needed a 93rd minute winner from Ronald Araujo to beat Girona 2-1 in a Catalan derby at Montjuic. More on that in a second. Villarreal against Betis was 2-2. It was a brilliant game. It really often is when these two sides meet. It's turning into one of my favourite fixtures in La Liga. More on that in this week's newsletter, which will be out for patrons a little bit later on. Villarreal 2, Betis 2. And Atletico Madrid beat Osasuna 1-0 at the Metropolitano. It was a important victory for Atleti, who played well during large swathes of the game, but needed a massive save from Jan Oblak right at the end to secure all 3 points. Then on Sunday, as you mentioned, Elche and Athletic Club finished 0-0. It's a really disappointing start to the season from Athletic Club, and they just do not look like anywhere near the standard of play that they had last season. Celta Vigo obviously drew 1-1. Obviously, I don't even have to tell you that their game against Real Sociedad finished 1-1. Their 7th 1-1 of the season. This is genuinely getting beyond a joke now. How many 1-1s can a team get during the season? We're about to find out because Celta are going to set the new record. Matchday 9, their 7th 1-1 of the season against Real Sociedad. The mighty, glorious, beautiful, magnificent Rayo Vallecano with a 3-0 victory over Levante at the Ciudad de Valencia Stadium. 2 goals from Jorge de Frutos, Fruity George, scoring on his return to his former club and very ostentatiously not celebrating either goal. And then Real Madrid beat Getafe 1-0 in a game which finished late last night at the Coliseum Alfonso Perez. Monday, it's not called that anymore, is it? It's just the
No, Alfonso has been...
Yes.
Ditched.
He's been cancelled. Absolutely cancelled.
Just the Coliseum now, yeah.
Yeah, just the Coliseum. Monday Night Football is Alaves against Valencia. It's the Clásico this weekend, so you might want to join us over at patreon.com/TSFP. I mean, you might want to join us anyway, every week, but particularly building up to the biggest fixture in world football. Membership starts at just €4.75 a month, which is just over £1 a week. You get the Monday and Friday podcasts without any adverts. You get the Q&A pod every Tuesday, the bonus pod every Thursday. There's the newsletter, there's the Discord, there's Zoom calls with us, there's the TSFP diary. There's loads of stuff going on there. If you like Spanish football, you get loads of content there, and membership starts at just €4.75 a month. Sydney, you got back from the Coliseum late last night, having seen Real Madrid beat Getafe by 1-0, the only goal scored by Kylian Mbappe. Well taken goal, although he probably should have scored earlier on in the game. It came late on after what had been a typical game. We knew this was going to be the game. It played out like that. Xabi Alonso said, coming to Getafe, you know it might not be a nice game. Wasn't a nice game, Sid.
No, it wasn't. I also didn't think, though, that it was a particularly dirty one or a particularly cheaty one until kind of a bit later on in the game. I thought Getafe kept Real Madrid largely at arm's length. I think there was a couple of very good chances early on for Mbappe, both inside the first 10 minutes. And at that point, I thought, actually, Getafe are going to be cut open. But they managed to... I don't know if they readjusted or just kind of were a little bit more alert to Mbappe from then on. And really and truly, Madrid didn't do very much at all. Getafe didn't do a huge amount, but they had a couple of semi-decent chances. There's that San Cris volley in particular that flies just past the post. And it was looking like a game that Getafe had under control, except, of course, it's Real Madrid. So you always feel like there's enough quality on the pitch. It's only going to take one moment. You've got a player like Mbappe. You've got changes you can make from the bench. So both Vinicius and Arda Güler went on. Raul Asensio did as well, but I don't think that's what changes the game. It's the other two changes that do it. And eventually Real Madrid got a victory, which is a really, really big one. Now they got it, of course, with 2 red cards for Getafe. One of them, I suppose you can say, is the decisive one because the goal comes soon after it. The second one comes much, much later on. But then even with 9 men, Getafe almost caught Real Madrid. There's a great chance for Abu Kamara right at the very, very end where Courtois, who hadn't had to do very much, makes a really brilliant save.
There is always a Thibaut Courtois save, almost always at least one Thibaut Courtois save, and this one came deep into stoppage time, which would have meant a really dramatic equaliser for Getafe and a really massive blow for Real Madrid. If they dropped points to 9-man Getafe the week before the Clásico, all hell would have broken loose. As it is, we're here talking about a pretty solid performance from Real Madrid. It wasn't spectacular, but they should have won this game. You look at the stats, you look at the chances, you look at the XG, the shots on target, touches inside the box. Real Madrid absolutely dominating. You know what you're going to get when you play against Getafe. Sydney, you were there and you were pitch side, and you had Vinicius right in front of you when he came on. He came on in the second half, and he made things happen, not necessarily with his football. I didn't think he looked particularly sharp when he came on, but he made things happen by provoking fouls and ultimately provoking that first red card.
Yeah, it was actually really amazing to watch. And I had him right in front of me. We're talking 2 meters from me, if that. And watching that process of how the game shifts with him coming on, because as you say, because of the way that he draws people into fouls, or maybe a more accurate way of putting it would be effectively invents fouls at times. The very first thing he did, I think it was on Juan Iglesias. Essentially, I mean, look, let's kind of try and define this. Essentially, what Vinicius did was Getafe.
Yeah, yes.
The very first one he gets the ball and sees, I think it's Juan Iglesias coming, and basically throws himself at Iglesias, goes to ground, wins the foul, which the contact has been entirely created by him. Sees the opportunity to kind of go into Juan Iglesias, wins the foul, goes down holding his face, gets up, laughs in Juan Iglesias' face, and you think, right, this game has gone into a different phase now. And it's very interesting. And I was talking to a Brazilian colleague about this yesterday, and he said, look, I can accept the argument that
Vinicius
was provocative and that Vinicius wound it up and that Vinicius was a troublemaker in any game except against Getafe. If ever there's a team that doesn't have, if you like, the moral authority to complain about this, it's Getafe.
Juan Iglesias apparently said to Vinicius, "That's why everybody hates you."
Yeah, and actually, do you know what? I think. Yes, well, exactly. And of course, Juan Iglesias will understand that and will know that. Yeah. Now, for what it's worth, Juan Iglesias is by no means, not even close to being the sort of the embodiment of Getafe. In terms of, if you take the Getafe players and say, who's the one that really gets under your skin, that's provoking you, that's saying things to you, that's pushing you and shoving you, it's not actually him. And so I can see on a kind of personal level. But as you say, yeah, I mean, it's the context of what you're doing. And he spoke post-game, Juan Iglesias, actually to us. And one of the questions I said to him was, "Do you think Vinicius changed the game?" He said, "It's not that he changed the game; it's that he wound the game up."
Yeah.
And he said, and you look at some of his teammates, and they don't need to do that. He said, you look at Militao or Mbappe, who are actually the two that come to confront Juan Iglesias when he's confronting Vinicius. And he says they don't do it. They don't insult you. They're not having a go at you. They're not trying to provoke you. Now, obviously, I think one of the things is that if you play the way that Getafe play, surely you of any team should have the tools to not be drawn into that. And for what it's worth, I think the foul, and I'm sure most of our listeners will have seen it now. If not, go and have a quick look if you can, from Neon, that gets him sent off. He's been on the pitch 39 seconds. Now, Vinicius the ball's not even there. The ball is the attack is about, in fairness though, the attack is about to be launched and Vinicius starts his run. And he sort of runs off the touchline inside and Neon goes across to stop him. Now, I personally think there's a couple of things that happen here, and I think this is why you can point the finger at both of them. Neom, basically, I think, is not just trying to stop him; he's trying to say, first challenge, just let him know I'm here. It's a message. Although I think it's an incredibly bizarre message, considering I think one of the reasons why the change is made is that Juan Iglesias has already been booked. And I think you're saying, right, we don't want a fullback up against Vinicius, who's got a yellow card. Well, 39 seconds later, you've got a fullback up against Vinicius, who's got a red card. And I think Neom is very daft because I think he puts a foot across him. I think he puts an arm across him as well. But I think, again, it's a little bit like the first one with Vinicius. Vinicius, I think, sees it coming and goes over it and makes and absolutely makes the most of it, and gets a red card. Now, for what it's worth, I think it probably is a red card because of the nature of the challenge.
Yeah.
I personally think if he'd got out a yellow, no one would have said anything.
No.
Everyone would have been completely accepted it as yellow. And in my view, that's a yellow. But then I think all of our listeners know, conceptually, I think we've set the bar far too low for red cards in Spain generally. Actually for yellow cards as well. But anyway, it was fascinating to watch, and it was really a really good insight into that kind of part of the game, and that I suppose, what would you call it? A sort of a trash talking, street football-y sort of thing. For one, I mean, I know those are both. I've just used two horrible cliches there, and I apologise, but I can't think of a better way of putting it.
Yeah,
that idea of that, you get them to be provoked, and Vinicius was enjoying it. This wasn't, and I think it's an important point to make, by the way, a very important distinction to make here. This wasn't Vinicius being angry and confronting people because he was angry. This was Vinicius choosing, this is the way to win this game, and he Getafe'd Getafe.
He Getafe'd Getafe. He absolutely did. Let's talk about some. I thought it was important to get on this because you were pitch side. This was right.
Yeah, no, genuinely, exactly.
Game, particularly this game as well, which hinged on this kind of action.
No, it definitely did. Exactly. I'm slightly impatient with how the polemica and the controversy leads everything in Spanish coverage of football. But having sat last night so close to it, I genuinely thought it was fascinating. This for me is an attempt to tell people what it was like, and it was really, really interesting that awareness all the time when you receive the ball. There's a defender. Go for the defender. Basically make the defender foul me. And it was really interesting.
Some other issues to talk about from the game. What about the starting 11 for the Clásico, which is coming up on Sunday? They do have a game in the Champions League midweek against Juventus, which is a big one. Who's going to be in that starting 11? In the midfield, we had Tchouaméni, Camavinga and Bellingham start this game with Maslantono out on the right-hand side. Gula presumably comes into the starting 11. Fede Valverde presumably stays at right back, although maybe Trent is back for that game. We don't know. But what sort of clues did you get from yesterday's match?
Well, I thought this game wasn't particularly helpful from a clue point of view, and I think it's not helpful for a couple of reasons. I think one is the very basic thing of it's the first game post international break, and it's also the first game before both Juventus and Barcelona. So I think what this tells us is about preparing a week and protecting it. The other thing, of course, is that it comes with a whole load of injuries, and if you go through them, they're nearly all at the back. So it's Rudiger, Carvajal, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Howson, Mendy, and Ceballos is the only one who's not a defender. Now, because you've got all those defenders missing, you've got Fede Valverde at right back. Now, I'm not even entirely sure that even then I thought it might be that they would play with Raul Asencio at right back and Fede would play in a sort of midfieldy role. It was interesting pre-game. And obviously I wasn't watching this, but my producer, because we were preparing the game, said, look, Real Madrid TV is saying that they think it's three at the back and two wing backs. That Fede's a wing back on the right and that Camavinga's a wing back on the left and that it's a line of three behind them. It absolutely wasn't that. It absolutely was not that at all. So I think you're right. Fede Valverde probably stays at right back if there's no really significant return from injury before the Clásico. And it's possible that Carvajal makes it. I don't think he will, but I think it's possible. Then you look at that midfield and you think, well, Tchouaméni definitely starts. I think you're right. Coming on and playing the pass and being as important as he was, I think Arda Güler starts. I think Bellingham probably starts, although I wasn't that over impressed with him last night. I thought he started quite well and then sort of drifted from the game a little bit. And I actually didn't think that yesterday's structure really told us very much. It was broadly a 4-2-3-1, him behind the forwards. I didn't think that really told us very much. I think Vinicius starts. Not Rodrigo as yesterday. And Camavinga, who was the one really big doubt. This was an opportunity for him. I don't think it's an opportunity he took, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, we'll see. There are plenty of options and permutations for Xavi Alonso to play with. The Clásico is on. Looking forward to it at the Bernabeu, Real Madrid against Barcelona. Before we move on, I just want to give a quick shout out to a Getafe player who we have mentioned before, and I think could play, with all due respect to Getafe, at a much higher level. Luis Milla, man, he's such a good footballer. He's leading La Liga for assists, by the way, this season. Just FYI. But what a terrific player he is. I mean, he's 31. He's probably not going to move to a bigger club now. There were suggestions he might have moved to Atletico Madrid in the last 12 months. That never happened. But I really enjoy watching him play, and not just when he's delivering these incredible balls into the box, but he's just such an intelligent footballer. Shout out to Luis Milla.
Yeah, I mean, as our regular listeners may know, I used to watch him play for Fuenlabrada, and he was just so much better than everyone else. It was glorious watching him play. Now I know obviously the context is that he was playing at Segunda B, and we're now talking about someone who you're saying should play higher than Getafe, that should be at an Atletico Madrid or someone like that. But honestly, just wonderful, and those qualities haven't been lost. What's been added, I think, is a steel to his game. He's always been incredibly serious about how he prepares the game, maybe almost to the point slightly of obsessiveness over things like diet and so on. But I really like him.
Shout out to Luis Milla Jr. and his performance. Getafe beaten 1-0 at home by Real Madrid.
This episode, Phil, of TSFP is brought to you by our friends at NordVPN.
Certainly is, Sid. Now, you guys know we travel a lot covering Spanish football, whether it's following Spanish teams around Europe in the Champions League,
or going to 3 games in a weekend.
The best way to make sure you've got access to all your content from back home is using NordVPN.
Me and Al actually used it ourselves over the summer at the Club World Cup, and it works brilliantly.
Yep, you can keep up with the football, TV shows, or movies. NordVPN lets you access your subscriptions back home, wherever you are.
And this is really important, it's really easy to use. So if you're tech savvy, like some of us, don't worry.
Yeah. Not so tech savvy. It's very, very of time using public Wi-Fi networks, like at train stations or airports or hotel lobbies.
Basically, those places where I am, 90% of the time.
You can connect with just one click. It's one of the fastest VPNs around, and you can use up to 10 devices with one account. For more information, and this is really important, you need to head to nordvpn.com/TSFP.
And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you get 4 extra months for free. What was that link again, Phil?
It's nordvpn.com/TSFP. Now, we'll continue to talk about football in just a second, but there is something obviously that we have to mention from this week, and it's particularly noteworthy. There was a protest before every single game in La Liga this weekend on Matchday 9 from players against the game in Miami. La Liga have organised and announced that Villarreal against Barcelona is going to take place on the 20th of December in Miami, and the Players' Union, Sid, called this protest and this sort of 15-20-second strike, which took place before every match this weekend. You may or may not have seen it wherever you're watching around the world. But yeah, this was called by the Players' Union, Sid.
Yeah, I think there's an important caveat to add here, and I've been kind of banging on about this a bit. And in a moment or two, I'll explain one of the reasons why I've been banging on about it a bit. Is that there's an assumption, I think, that the Players' Union did this protest because they are, determinedly opposed to the game in Miami. They've never actually said that. In my opinion, they've lacked the courage to say that, or maybe lacked the unanimity to say that. I don't think that within the players group there is actually a unanimous decision to be against this. I think some players don't care particularly. I think some players sort of don't mind very much. I think some players will obviously be opposed to it. I think the players involved probably don't really fancy it very much, although there might be some of them that think this is a bit of an experience. I think the most important thing is that what the Players' Union is complaining about really is that they haven't been consulted, that they haven't been spoken to, that this hasn't been, if you like, a process that has taken them into account. And so I actually think in a way, So for example, stopping for 15 seconds this weekend at the start of each game is kind of quite a big statement. But in a way, it's one that doesn't really change very much in that, you do 15 seconds and the game goes on and kind of everyone forgets about it. And in a way, I think that's kind of the embodiment of their stance on this. This isn't them saying, we will not let you play this game. This is them saying, well, why didn't you talk to us? And now, of course, the league is now saying, well, we're open to dialogue whenever you want. That's really not true. But I think in a way, there's a bit of me that thinks this will ultimately end up in nothing. And I don't want to sound over cynical, but let me sound over cynical for a moment. Essentially, the complaint is you haven't consulted us. Well, to be honest, I think the response to that is no, and nor will they. And nor in the end will you actually do anything to stop this game, because, as I say, that's not really necessarily, at least as far as they've said so far, their end game in this. The Players' Union are not saying we're going to stop this. They're saying, how can you not have talked to us?
Right. They just want to be involved in the discussions.
Yeah, and then probably lose the discussion. Even if they now do say, well, actually, we're opposed to it, I don't think they've got the leverage or the determination to force through that leverage to stop the game. And this was described as a strike. As I say, as strikes go, it's a fairly rubbish one. It's like going into work, standing at the offices of work and say, "Boo, down with this kind of thing." Right, everyone, back on with work then.
Are we expecting more of this kind of thing?
I guess we might have. I think that there may now be some attempt, if only because it's become public, to kind of what do you call in English escenificar, kind of make a point of, or express the idea that we're talking to them now. That we'll invite them to a meeting, or we'll set up a meeting. And actually, there has been some talk about some dates where La Liga and the players' unions don't necessarily agree. I think one of the reasons was that the players' union will. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think I've understood this right. The players' union was saying you can't set a date after the tickets have already gone on sale, because you're effectively making it impossible for us to stop this anyway. So what they want the league to think, or at least what they're allowing the league to believe, is that we could still oppose this, but at no point have they actually said we are against this game. And I think that's a really, really important caveat to put in.
I think that is important, because I wasn't aware of that. I just understood that they were intrinsically against this.
Well, I mean, we all understand that they're intrinsically against it, but they've never actually said it. If you read their statements, at no point they mention the difficulties that it comes with it, but at no point has the AFE, the players' union, said we are against this game. This game can't be taken out of Spain. Their view and their voice in that sense is very different. For example, FASFE, who equally, by the way, a fans supporters group, equally won't be listened to. I mean, these are voices that are just not going to be heard, to be perfectly honest with you.
We will monitor this situation. Obviously, it is ongoing, and there will be more twists and turns, I'm sure. And we've got questions on this, by the way, for our Q&A tomorrow. Okay. So people have asked us questions, so we'll be answering them on the Q&A pod tomorrow. Back to the football. Barcelona beating Girona 2-1. Araujo coming off the bench to be deployed as a number 9 and duly scoring the winning goal in injury time. This was a funny game, because Barcelona started it absolutely dominating Girona. They had all the ball. Girona couldn't get anywhere near it. They tried to bring the ball out from the back and instantly lost it. Barcelona were all over them. They scored early on in first 15 minutes or so. Brilliant goal from Pedro. And if you haven't seen it, the finish is just so ingenious. It's well worth a few seconds of your time to appreciate it. They were on top, and then they scored, and they just let Girona back into this game somehow. It helps when Axel Witsel scores an unbelievable bicycle kick, which nobody really expected to happen. But from then, I mean, Girona had 3 or 4 very, very, very clear-cut chances in that first half, which they really should have taken. They didn't. In the second half, Barcelona were better. They created more chances. They should have scored earlier than the 92nd minute, but they didn't. They just about got away with it, Sid. And Hansi Flick has been banging on about an improvement in attitude and an improvement in commitment and intensity. And we didn't really see that. There was no reaction from this Barcelona side, who were coming off the back, remember, of 2 consecutive defeats.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a whole load of things to pick up on. Very briefly, let me pick up on the Axel Witsel thing, which I really loved, because post game, Michel, the manager of Girona, was doing his post game interview with, I think it was DAZN, wasn't it? Yes. Who had this game, and he said, I don't think Witsel's ever scored a goal like that. And they said, actually, he has.
Yeah.
almost identical when
Yes.
playing in Belgium. I think I can't remember which game it was now. Because actually has a okay then, which I quite enjoyed.
Witzel himself said it in the post-match interview. He
Yeah.
said, yeah, they like talked me through the goal. He was like, yeah, well, I scored one similar to this, so I thought I'd try again.
Yeah, and it was great because
I was on commentary for this, and I was basically saying, "You've never seen Axel Witzel score a goal like this. This is unbelievable."
And then he comes out and ruins everything.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Yeah.
Which is exactly what he'd done to his manager as well.
Yeah.
Because of course the interviewers had heard Witzel and he hadn't. So when he says he's never scored one, I go, actually,
yes.
There's a lot of things to pick up on this, and as you say, one of them is that sense that Barcelona started swarming all over Girona, getting a lot of the ball, totally in charge, and then the pace came out of the game, and the attitude came out of the game, and the pressing came out of the game. And I think one of the reasons for that is obviously the week that they have ahead of them and the number of injuries. And I think at some subconscious level, you get the goal and say, okay, we're all right now, rather than being aggressive and relentless and keeping on going. And I think there's an element of that. And I think that fits with what you're saying about the idea of attitude over the last few weeks. And I also want to pick up on something that Pedri said post-game, which fits exactly with this point that we're talking about now. And Pedri said, I'm not happy with how we've played after the victory. He said, we leave here, and it's been a few games now. Does he say a few or does he say two? I think he says a few. There's been a few games now where we haven't been doing things well, in particular, the press on the ball.
Yeah.
Now, I think this is really important because I think that there is a bit of a risk. And let me take a very slight detour here. You said that Girona had 3 really clear chances. And even if you haven't seen this game, listeners, you can imagine what those chances look like.
Oh, yeah. You know what they are.
Right through the middle of the team, right through the middle of the pitch, loads of space, one-on-ones. Right. Okay. So back to where I was to go back off the detour. And Pedri says, one of the things we did badly was a press. And I think it's important this because I think there is a tendency, and I include myself in this, to talk about Barcelona's high line, to talk about the vulnerability and see it in terms of that line itself, which of course is true. It is true that it is partly about, but it's not just that. It's about not allowing the other team the chance to play the pass through that line. Now, that line means that you've got loads of space to hit, means that the pass that you play is relatively simple if you can get the timing of the runners right. But you've still got to be able to play that pass. And if you've got 4 Barcelona players on you, you can't play that pass. One of the things so with Pedri saying that, I think that's really important because for this to function, it's not just about the timing. It's about the press all the way around the pitch. And that includes the forwards. It's everywhere. And one of the things that Michel said post-game, which fits with this, is he said, we did a really, really good job of withstanding that first bit of press from Barcelona, playing 2 or 3 passes to then be able to, and the word he used, I think, was lanzar. What would you call that in English? It's not really launch. It's not really launch, but it sort of means launch, doesn't it? Release. Play that release pass. Get that ball into that space for people to run onto. And Barcelona were very fortunate, I thought, not to get caught out. There's one really good one-on-one save from Szczesny. There's the one-on-one that hits the post. And then there's a third one. I'm trying to think what the third one looks like now. I think it's the same, but I'm trying to think the final outcome of it. I can't. My mind's gone blank. But basically, there are 3 that are essentially the same thing, or more or less the same thing. And I think that's really important. And I think you can ask questions about coordination. You can ask questions about intensity. You can ask questions about physical condition as well, which is curious because, of course, Barca weren't at the Club World Cup. If anyone had an advantage physically at this stage of the season, it should have been them.
I think it's worth pointing out that 2 players who were very, very key to that last season and the pressing right from the front were Rafinha and Lamine Yamal. Lamine Yamal, we spoke about everything that he did. I think he was 2nd or 3rd in the division for final third recovery. So last season, he was really actually defending high up the pitch a lot. It's just we didn't necessarily understand how important that was. He's not been in the team, and now he is, and still not fully fit 100%. He only played 60 minutes. Rafinha hasn't been in the team, and without those 2, that first line of the press doesn't work as well.
Absolutely right. And I think, and I hope that this is an opportunity for people to see the significance of Rafinha in particular.
Yeah.
In terms of the character, in terms of driving the team on, in terms of the relentlessness, in terms of winning games when they're not actually playing that well. You think about the game away at Benfica, where he was phenomenal.
5-4.
5-4.
You were there.
Yeah, I was. That was amazing. That, yeah, really, really amazing. And but all the way through the season, and I felt like at the end of last season, when things like the discussion around nonsense like the Ballon d'Or and stuff, but those things sort of do matter.
Yeah,
I felt like it was I thought people were a little bit quick to write him out of that conversation.
I think he felt people were quite quick to write him out of the conversation as well.
And I think he's right. Yeah.
Hansi Flick isn't going to be at the Clásico. He was sent off in this
Yeah.
game. And then after sending off, after being sent off and Barcelona scored this injury time winner, what is corte de mangas in English? He did
It's
the
well, I mean,
celebration where it's sort of
yeah,
going up yours. If you're watching on
it's
YouTube, I'm doing it now. It's up yours.
it's a kind of up yours, isn't it? But I must admit, I think it sort of doesn't really. I don't know about Germany, and I'm not gonna stand here and make a point about Germany. I don't think it's really exists that much in England, does it? As a thing, you're much
No.
more likely to flick the V or stick
Yeah.
a and to kind of celebrate like that isn't necessarily an up yours. It's just like a yes, come on. But
I
anyway,
don't think
there's
you do
been
it if you're particularly happy with how things have gone.
no. I think exactly. I think it's an
Yeah.
angry celebration. It's a
Yeah.
release celebration, isn't it? And I think you could see that in him because his face was kind of a real. Also, by the way, he'd been sent off. What's he doing standing there at the side of the pitch?
Good question. Excellent question. Excellent question.
He's not
Yeah.
supposed to be there, is he? He's supposed to be
No.
off. And
Yeah.
he's sort of in the mouth of the tunnel without ever really getting anywhere down the tunnel. Anyway, that's sort of by the by. It's not
Yes.
enormously important, although it's
Well,
become
he-
the issue in Spain.
Well, and also he's not going to be at the Clasico. So
He's not going to be in the Clasico because he was sent off. He got the 2 yellow cards back to back. Basically, he's complaining about a decision. He gets a yellow card, then he kind of goes, "Oh, whatever." To the
Yeah.
yellow, he does that sort of thing. Oh, sod off, basically. I don't know what the words are, but the gesture is, "Oh, what's that?" And he gets another one. And I must admit, I did think that this was one of those ones. You know, you sometimes get referees who are, what's the best English translation of desafiante?
Well, challenging, like to sort of,
Yeah, it's sort of it's like they're kind of going, come on then, you know.
Go on then.
And so he kind of gets out the first yellow card and he keeps looking at Flick as
Yeah.
if to say, go on,
Do it
have
again.
another
Go on.
go. Go on, do it again.
Go on, punk. Go ahead, punk. Make my day.
Make my day. Exactly that. And Flick did make his day.
Yeah, he did. So yeah, Hansi Flick sent off. Barcelona winning in injury time and going into the Clasico off the back of a victory. And we've got to move on, Sid. We've been rambling on, and we've still got a few other things to talk about. Atletico Madrid beating Osasuna by a goal to nil. As I said in the introduction, I thought Atletico Madrid actually played pretty well in this game for large swathes, as they have done. This felt like it could be a repeat of other matches this season because they've played well in other games. They've had chances to score in other games. They haven't taken them, and then they've been made to pay. They weren't made to pay here because Jan Oblak pulls off an unbelievable late save from Ante Budimir. It's a chance that Budimir scores, not even 9 times out of 10, I think, maybe 99 times out of 100. But Oblak saves, and Atletico Madrid win. We were bigging this up on the Friday pod. Al was at the game and he was saying, I really enjoy going to watch Atletico Madrid at the Metropolitano. They're a team that are, really quite exciting to watch. They play some good football, and they really can be when they're playing at home.
Yeah. No, away from home it's different, very different.
It is.
I mean, maybe not completely awful, but certainly different. And you're right. That idea of it was happening again. You score the first goal, and that's the point at which the old Atletico would shut up shop and win 1-0. Now, I know in the end they did win this 1-0, and in that sense, it is a bit of the old Atletico, but that's not the way it played out.
Yeah,
they were a little fortunate in well, I don't know. Do you call it fortunate when a goalkeeper makes a great save? That's not fortune. It's quality, it's technique. But they really should have killed this game sooner.
Yeah.
They got a goal very early on, which was ruled out for an offside, which I have conceptual difficulties with, but there you go. I kind of understand the rule.
I think everyone does.
There's a bit of me that thinks that's just nonsense, really. But anyway, it is the rules, and so it sort of is the right decision, sort of. Yeah, exactly. I'm very sort of on this one. Anyway, and they did mostly play pretty well, and they did move the ball well. And I think what was significant about that first goal for me, apart from the decision, was the role played in it by Baena. Finding a way of fitting Baena into the team, which I think is going to be really important. The goal they do eventually get is scored by Almada, who actually hadn't really played very much at all since the first game of the season. In fact, I'm not sure what his minutes are, but there'll be almost none since the first game of the season. He scores, so that's quite important. And they sort of look all right, Atletico, but I can't quite bring myself to say they're good until they get a run going that includes some away wins.
There's this word which we've spoken about a lot, which Diego Simeone uses a lot, and we've struggled to try and translate it, and it is contundencia. What's your translation for it again, Sid?
Well, it's kind of decisiveness, I suppose, isn't it?
Yes, and he was asked about this in the post-match press conference saying that his side were lacking contundencia again. And he said, well, Jan Oblak was contundente with his
That's true.
save. So he said we had
decisive.
contundencia there. So there we go.
Yeah.
Which does sort of fit into this idea of being decisive. Really good assist, by the way, from Giuliano Simeone for the goal scored by Thiago Almada, who just like technically he's not an amazing player, but he's so aggressive and fast and just sort of non-stop and just
well, if earlier on we said that you can imagine what all the chances that Barcelona conceded look like, you can imagine exactly what this Gio Simeone assist looks like. Yeah. It's that head back, the veins on the side of his head are bursting. He's going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and absolutely every bit of him is going past people, reaches a byline, gets the byline, pulls it back, someone's arriving goal. And that's basically what he does so well. And he does it with a determination and it's almost comic watching him. And talking about watching Vinicius up close, I've been obviously a couple of times pitch side with Gio, with Simeone on my side of the pitch coming at me, and you think, God, I wouldn't want to be that defender.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So Atleti beating Osasuna 1-0. Osasuna with some decent performances this season, but they're not picking up the points. They're not scoring enough goals. Speaking of scoring goals, Antony scored twice for Betis in that 2-2 draw at Villarreal. Big impact from him. They kind of needed him to start producing a little bit in terms of numbers.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Pellegrini was talking about post-game, this idea that this is an important player, that we needed to give him the time to settle in, that it wasn't going to be quite the same as last year. He obviously, the whole deal was done a little bit late, very late in the window. And just that sense of him kind of finding his place again. I always thought, I think we may have talked about this earlier in the season, that there was a risk for Betis, which is that initial impact of him on loan with so much to prove. When you come back a second season,
absolutely,
and you're established and you're comfortable, there's a bit of me that just thought, I just wonder if there's a chance that this isn't the same. The talent's there. There's no two ways about that.
Yeah, just like, the start of a relationship, everything's amazing and exciting and glorious and it's new and, I'm having such a wonderful time. Yeah. And then you make the commitment.
And then you don't bring me flowers anymore.
It's just... But anyway, Antony bringing the flowers for the Betis fans with two absolutely brilliant goals to secure a point at the Estadio de la Cerámica. More on that in the newsletter, which will be out for patrons shortly. Before we go, in the Segunda, Zaragoza were beaten 5-0 at home by Cultural Leonesa on Saturday. They're bottom of the table with 6 points from 10 games. Well, yeah, the manager, Gabi was gone. Yeah. Gabi was their manager, Atletico Madrid Gabi. He's gone. They've brought in the B team boss, and God knows what's going on there. Racing Santander atop. They beat Depor 2-1. Elsewhere, Leganés beat Malaga 2-0 and Sporting won 3-2 at Valladolid. We'll be back on Friday for the preview pod, looking ahead to El Clasico and the other matches on Matchday 10 in La Liga EA Sports, including Athletic Club against Getafe, which we're commentating together, Sid.
Oh, we are.
A lovely treat for me. I don't know about the listeners, but there we go. If you want us
Saturday night, isn't it?
Saturday sort of, afternoon. Yeah. If you want us in the meantime, we're over at patreon.com/TSFP. We're answering your questions tomorrow. Bonus pod coming up on Thursday. So make sure you join us then, amigos. Lots of Champions League stuff to discuss as well. Adios.
Cheerio.